I never believed that paintings could hide secrets, until I found myself alone in that cursed castle. That night, the corridors seemed to close in around me, as if the old stones themselves were conspiring to whisper warnings in my ear. It was well past the hour when most servants retired, yet I remained in the quiet halls, a single lantern trembling in my grip. I had not intended to stay this late. I was just a humble clerk, accustomed to ink and parchment, not midnight mysteries. Until recently, my life had been simple: copying records, verifying inventories, and double-checking the lineages of noble families who lived and died without ever knowing my name. I never imagined that my quiet, predictable existence would lead me straight into a secret that might shake the monarchy to its core. The castle's silence was complete, broken only by the faint howl of the wind through the high windows. My task that night had been straightforward: finalize the estate inventory of the recently deceased Lord Edmund. He had passed under suspicious circumstances a few months ago. Officially, an accident. Unofficially, the servants' whispers hinted otherwise. I had uncovered nothing unusual in his chests, ledgers, and letters so far, but I wanted one last pass before concluding my report. I told myself it was diligence, but perhaps a strange intuition had guided my hand to stay longer. As I crossed a wide corridor lined with portraits of long-dead royals, something caught my eye. One painting in particular, set at the far end, drew me closer like a magnet. It depicted a young nobleman with piercing eyes, seated beside a window, holding a scroll. By lantern light, those painted eyes seemed almost alive, as if they followed my every movement. Ridiculous, I thought, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. I stepped closer, noting that the corridor's chill deepened. As I raised my lantern, I noticed a slight protrusion under the paint near the nobleman's hand. It looked like something hidden beneath the canvas, a subtle bulge that no one else might notice. My heart began to race. Why would a portrait conceal anything? I forced myself to look away, shaking my head. I was just a clerk, not a detective, and the castle was full of oddities. Still, a strange unease gnawed at me. For years I had catalogued the possessions of nobles, ensuring order in the kingdom's records. Never had I questioned the legacy of the ruling line. Yet tonight, something felt off, as though the old structure held secrets that wanted to be found. Returning to the small study where I had been working, I opened the last crate of Edmund's effects. Inside, I discovered a roll of parchment tied with a faded green ribbon. It looked older than the rest, bearing the king's grandfather's seal. As I carefully unrolled it, my blood ran cold. It was an older version of a royal will, one that contradicted the accepted line of succession. Here, named in graceful ink, was a forgotten heir, someone other than the current king's line. If this were true, the entire monarchy sat on a lie, and the present sovereign had no rightful claim. My heart thumped so loudly I feared it would echo in the empty hall. This document was a loaded crossbow aimed at the kingdom's heart. If revealed, it could spark civil unrest. Who else knew? Lord Edmund must have discovered it. Was that why he died? A faint sound drifted under the door, a soft scrape. I held my breath, shoving the parchment back into its crate. My fingertips shook. I waited, listening. Silence. Perhaps I was growing paranoid, yet the castle's stillness now felt predatory, as if unseen eyes lurked behind every tapestry. Gathering my courage, I stepped into the corridor. The painting's nobleman still gazed impassively. Had Edmund tried to restore this old claim before meeting his end? If someone else knew, how far would they go to keep the truth hidden? As I drifted toward the portrait again, I almost reached out to touch the canvas. Before I could, a distant door creaked. I jerked back, heart pounding. I was not alone after all. Footsteps echoed softly, then stopped. I extinguished the lantern's flame, holding my breath in the dark. Whoever was out there, they wanted no witness. I crept silently along the corridor, refusing to give myself away. When I relit the lantern in the next gallery, It illuminated only empty space. Yet I felt watched, as if someone had melted into the shadows. The heaviness in my chest warned me. I had stumbled into dangerous territory. And with that old will tucked away, I was now custodian of a secret that threatened the very throne. I would have left right then and there, but curiosity and duty bound me. I had to be careful. Tomorrow I would return to the archives and confirm the old lineage. Then perhaps I could decide whom to trust. But trust would be hard to come by in a world where power and bloodlines governed life and death. As I left the corridor behind, I glanced once more at that painting. The lantern's glow flickered over the young nobleman's painted eyes. They seemed to say, "Keep digging if you dare." What I found in that hidden library, even now I suspected there must be more hidden spaces, would change everything. But I had no idea I was already under surveillance. Someone was watching me, waiting for me to make a wrong move. If I had known what awaited behind that secret door and those painted eyes, I would never have taken another step forward. Yet it was too late. Fate had already drawn me into its deadly game. The next morning I rose early from a fitful sleep in my cramped servant's chamber. I remembered how, just days ago, my life had been so peaceful, filing decrees, copying family trees, ensuring the king's laws were accurately recorded. I'd taken quiet pride in my work. Nobody noticed a clerk unless he made a mistake, and I rarely did. My life had been comfortable in its simplicity, far removed from battles over crowns and succession. Yet here I was now, heart fluttering as I stepped into the archival rooms at dawn. The smell of dust and parchment greeted me, reassuring and familiar. Books and scrolls lined the shelves like old friends. I pulled down genealogical charts and began searching for the name mentioned in that old will. The records were silent on this hidden heir, only distant references to a Lady Miriam of Alborough who vanished under mysterious circumstances long ago. As I worked, Master Brighton, the head archivist, entered unexpectedly. He rarely came this early. His gaze settled on me like a hawk's. "Up early again, Arthur? Still working on Edmund's inventories?" I nodded, feigning calm. "Yes, Master Brighton, just ensuring all is in order." He said nothing, just strode away into the next chamber. The tension in his shoulders, the curiosity in his eyes. He suspected I had found something unusual. If Brighton was in on the secret, I was in grave danger. I forced myself to breathe steadily and slipped the charts back onto the shelves. Discretion was key. Stepping outside, I found the castle alive with morning chores. Servants hauled water, stable boys tended horses, and cooks prepared bread. Yet I sensed a change. Glances cast my way, hushed whispers trailing in my wake. Did they know I had touched a dangerous truth? Thomas, the groundskeeper, avoided my eyes, and the chambermaid who used to greet me simply passed with lowered gaze. The castle felt like a grand stage, and I was now a conspicuous actor stumbling into a role I never wanted. I returned to the corridor of portraits with a racing heart. In daylight, the painting looked ordinary. No strange bulge, no ominous glare, but I knew what I had seen. I studied the plaque beneath. No name, just a date. If this was the old king's era, the painting might hide more than just a curious texture. Could there be a mechanism behind it? A hidden nook? Footsteps approached. I pulled back, pretending to admire another portrait. A guard came into view, Celeste. Tall, broad-shouldered, and vigilant, she regarded me with narrowed eyes. Her presence radiated quiet menace. "Fancying art so early?" she asked in a measured tone. I shrugged with forced nonchalance. "The brushwork on these old portraits intrigues me." "Be careful," she said, voice low. "Some histories are better left undisturbed." She held my gaze a moment longer, then continued on her patrol. As she left, a chill ran down my spine. She knew something. They all did. Before I could return to my study, I found a note slipped beneath my door. "Stop searching. Truth brings ruin. Leave it be, or you'll share his fate." My stomach nodded. His fate must mean Edmund's. Someone had murdered him to protect this secret. Now they threatened me. Anger and fear mingled. Should I remain silent? The current king was well liked, and challenging his right to rule could shatter the kingdom's stability. But could I bear living with a lie that propped up an illegitimate throne? Determined to learn more, I ventured into the castle's lesser-known corridors that evening. Many old wings were abandoned, doors locked, tapestries faded. I recalled the cryptic bulge in the painting and the hint that there might be a hidden library somewhere. If I could find more proof, I could decide my next move from a position of strength. Wandering through quiet halls, I heard a faint whisper, my name, drifting like smoke. I followed it to a narrow corridor I'd never noticed before, half hidden by a dusty tapestry of a fox watching a sleeping stag. Behind that tapestry, I found a locked door. I pressed my ear against it and caught the distant sound of shifting wood. Someone, or something, waited on the other side. The door didn't budge, but that fox tapestry... The note mentioned something about a fox's watchful eye, didn't it? My mind buzzed with unanswered questions. I would need to explore further, but not now. A sudden shuffle of footsteps in the distance made me retreat. Whoever warned me wanted me silent. If they caught me snooping, I might never see daylight again. As I made my way back to my room, tension coiled in my gut. Everyone seemed to be watching. Celeste's knowing glare, Brighton's subtle pressure, the servants' fearful avoidance. Even the castle's silence took on a menacing edge. Edmund's death was no isolated tragedy. He must have been on the verge of revealing this old will. Now I was stumbling down the same treacherous path. That night I lay awake, lantern extinguished, listening to distant footsteps, creaks, and murmurs. I thought back to my old life, counting parchment sheets, cataloging royal decrees. I never expected to be the one who might unravel the kingdom's legacy. Yet the more I considered walking away, the heavier the truth weighed on me. If I kept silent, the kingdom would remain stable but built on a lie. If I spoke up, I risked chaos and my own life. Which was the greater sin, shattering illusions or upholding them? I drifted into uneasy sleep. Images swirled. The painting's haunting eyes, the old will's bold ink, Celeste's warning, and a fox's silent stare. The castle's secrets pressed down like a heavy mantle. I would soon learn what hid behind that locked door, and what waited beneath the fox's watchful eye. What I discovered would force me to choose between silence and truth, but I had no idea who might be waiting on the other side of that secret passage, ready to strike. The next morning, resolve and dread battled in my chest. I decided to seek counsel, albeit indirectly. There was a noblewoman known for her fairness, Lady Rosamond. She stood somewhat apart from the fervent politics of court. Perhaps she could offer guidance without betraying me. I found her in the castle's chapel, lighting a candle by the altar. The air smelled of frankincense, heavy and contemplative. I approached quietly. "My lady," I said, bowing. "Might I have a word?" She turned, eyes kind but cautious. "Of course, Arthur. You seem troubled." I lowered my voice. If someone discovered evidence that could change the fate of the kingdom, but revealing it would cause turmoil, what should that person do? Her brow furrowed in concern. Truth is delicate. Hidden lies poison a kingdom's soul, but exposing them can be dangerous. Still, doing nothing allows injustice to fester. I believe you must follow your conscience. Truth can hurt, but a lie hurts forever. Her words stung with honesty. I thanked her and left, mindful that someone might be watching. As dusk approached, I returned to that corridor with the fox tapestry. Fear gnawed at me, but I had to know what lay behind that locked door. The tapestry's pattern drew my eye. I felt along the wall until my fingertips found a loose stone. Pressing it, I heard a faint click. The door unlocked. Behind it, a narrow staircase led downward into stale darkness. Lantern raised, I descended, the stone steps cold beneath my feet. At the bottom lay a small, forgotten library. Shelves of moldering scrolls and worm-eaten books lined the walls. Dust thickened the air. I searched through brittle pages and discovered letters from the old king's era. They spoke of Lady Miriam's rightful claim, of a secret succession plan that vanished after her mysterious disappearance. There were hints of bribed courtiers, silenced witnesses, and a deliberate rewriting of history. My hands shook. This confirmed the old will. The current royal line sat on a stolen throne. My heart sank, imagining the kingdom's reaction if this truth surfaced. Would loyal subjects rise in rebellion? Would the nobles splinter into warring factions? Yet, how could I leave this secret buried? Footsteps echoed above. Panicked, I extinguished my lantern and pressed myself behind a shelf. Light trickled down the stairs as someone descended. I smelled sweat and leather. The intruder carried a blade, its glint visible even in the gloom. Celeste. She moved quietly, scanning the shadows. "You're here," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "I know you found something." I held my breath, heart hammering. She advanced, sword poised. In that tense silence, I noticed something flicker in her eyes. A hesitation. Was she always this ruthless? Or had her loyalty been twisted by those who feared the truth? For a moment she lowered the blade, as if questioning her purpose. I could almost see her thoughts. Why must she kill a lowly clerk to preserve a lie? Did she truly believe that stability was worth such brutality? But the moment passed. She steeled herself, grip tightening. Whatever doubts flickered in her heart, her training and orders prevailed. Before she could corner me, a distant clatter rang out above. Another guard? She cursed under her breath and retreated. I remained hidden, trembling. Celeste had hesitated, and that hesitation saved my life. Yet it revealed a crack in her resolve. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't entirely comfortable with her role as executioner. Perhaps she was caught in a system that demanded loyalty over conscience. When I finally dared to emerge, the room felt suffocating. I gathered a few documents to memorize their contents. Proof of the old king's intention was clear. Lady Miriam's descendants, if they existed, should rule. Edmund had tried to restore this rightful claim and paid with his life. Now I held the same deadly knowledge. Climbing the stairs, I carefully returned everything to place, leaving no obvious trace. As I emerged into the corridor and replaced the tapestry, sweat trickled down my neck. The tension strangled me. What would I do with this truth now? Silence would safeguard my life but maintain a corrupt order. Speaking out could ignite chaos but restore justice. That night, lying awake in my cramped chamber, I faced a moral dilemma that threatened to break me. My life before this seemed so distant, just ink and parchment, quiet days in the archives. I never asked for this burden, yet destiny or chance had chosen me. If I turned away, would I ever forgive myself? Another note appeared under my door at dawn. Last warning, drop this or suffer. My eyes burned with fatigue. They wanted me to yield. But fear and conscience wrestled within. Remembering Lady Rosamond's words, I realized I couldn't live under a lie. I decided I would bring these findings to light, somehow. I would need allies and a plan. As I rose to face the next day, I knew the moment of decision had come. I would not remain a pawn. I would confront the powers that be with the truth. But the question burned like acid. Would I live long enough to reveal it? Morning light spilled through the castle's high windows, and I felt a grim determination settle over me. I had the will's details memorized and knew where to find supporting documents if needed. The king and his council would convene soon. Presenting this truth publicly would be my best chance to survive. If I made a private accusation, I'd be silenced before a single noble could hear me. No, I needed the council's eyes on me, forcing those in power to act openly. I made my way through bustling corridors. Servants whispered my name, uncertain. Brighton eyed me from a distance, and Celeste hovered on patrol. I imagined them weighing their next moves. Would they strike now, or wait until I showed my hand? As I slipped into a disused corridor to collect my thoughts, Celeste confronted me again. Her blade remained sheathed, but her presence suffocated. "I warned you," she said quietly. "Stop this madness." I stood my ground, voice steady. Why cling to a lie, Celeste? If we base our kingdom on falsehood, how is that stability? It's merely illusion. She flinched, just a fraction, but enough for me to notice. You think truth will bring peace? It will bring bloodshed. I've sworn to protect the throne, and if that means silencing you, so be it. Yet her words lacked the same cold conviction as before. Beneath the surface, a struggle raged. Is protecting a stolen crown worth becoming a murderer? I asked. For a moment her mouth opened as if to retort, but she said nothing, only stepping back into the shadows. She left me shaken, but I sensed a crack in her armor. If I was to survive long enough to speak before the council, I needed allies. I hurried to find Lady Rosamond. She was no fool and had friends among the nobles. I found her in a balcony corridor overlooking the courtyard. When I explained the situation, carefully omitting details that could endanger her, she blanched but nodded. "We must present your evidence before the full council," she said. "They meet tomorrow. I'll arrange for some allies to stand by you. Do not approach the king privately. Make your accusation public. If they try to silence you in front of everyone, it will only confirm your claims." I thanked her, relief and terror mingling. We parted, and I felt a glimmer of hope. That evening, I returned to the secret library beneath the tapestry. I needed a few tangible proofs. The original sealed documents would strengthen my word. But as I descended, I found that Celeste had been there before me. The chest with the documents lay open, its contents scattered. She had tried to destroy the evidence, yet not all was lost. Some pages remained legible, some scrolls intact. Suddenly, a torch flared in the stairway. Celeste stood at the threshold, sword drawn. This time, no hesitation. "You will not leave this place alive," she hissed. My heart thundered. I gripped a broken shelf plank as a makeshift weapon. She lunged, blade slicing the air. I ducked, barely escaping a fatal blow. Sparks flew as steel nicked stone. My arm stung, a shallow cut. The scent of my own blood sharpened my fear. "Why?" I gasped, circling around her. "Do you even know why you're defending this lie? Are you so bound by your oath that you can't see reason?" She hesitated, teeth clenched. "Without a clear line on the throne, we have nothing but chaos. I've seen what happens when succession is contested. Riots, famine, massacres. Stability matters." I countered, breath ragged. "But you're fighting for a fraud. Stability built on lies is doomed. If the people learn the truth later, they'll revolt harder. We can guide them to a peaceful transition if we act now." She stepped closer, blade raised, but her eyes flickered with uncertainty. For a split second, the sword wavered. In that instant, a sudden crash echoed above. Someone else was coming. She cursed and bolted up the stairs, leaving me behind. Her fear of witnesses outweighed her orders. My knees buckled. Someone had intervened. A moment later, Tomas, the quiet groundskeeper, appeared, breathless. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice urgent. He thrust a bundle of documents into my hands. "I found these hidden behind a rotten shelf. Take them. They have seals and signatures. They'll prove your case." Tears pricked my eyes. "You helped me?" "Why?" Thomas lowered his gaze. "My family served under Lady Miriam's household long ago. Stories passed down told of a kind, just leader denied her birthright. I can't let the truth die again." With trembling gratitude, I took the documents and fled. I returned to my chamber and locked the door. All night I studied the pages, confirming what I already knew. Tomorrow, I would stand before the council and reveal everything. My heart pounded with a mixture of dread and defiance. Tomorrow I would face the kingdom's most powerful and attempt to unmask a lie entrenched for decades. And I knew that Celeste, and others, would be there, blades ready. Would I survive the reckoning I was about to unleash? Dawn arrived like the edge of a drawn sword. I rose from my restless sleep, determined to follow through. The council gathered in the grand hall today. King Roland would be present, as well as noble lords and ladies of influence. I carried the incriminating documents beneath my tunic and wore a whistle tied around my neck. Rosamond had given it to me, promising loyal friends would come to my aid if I blew it. As I made my way toward the hall, tension choked the air. Whispers raced along corridors. Lord Edmund's death, mysterious discoveries, a clerk seen skulking in old wings. Rumors that something momentous would happen today rippled through the castle. Guards looked uneasy, servants fretful. Outside the windows I imagined the kingdom's villages and towns going about their day, unaware that their monarchy hung in the balance. If I succeeded, they would learn the truth soon enough. If I failed, they might never know they had been deceived. Inside the grand hall, marble columns rose toward carved ceilings. The king sat on a throne at the far end, council members arranged at a long table before him. I stepped forward, heart pounding. The herald announced my presence and all eyes turned to me. I saw Brighton lurking in a corner, eyes narrowed. Celeste stood near the door, hand resting on her sword hilt. Lady Rosamond caught my gaze and gave a subtle nod. I was not alone. King Roland's voice rang out. "State your business, clerk." My mouth was dry. I cleared my throat. "Your Majesty, lords and ladies, I have come with grave news. I have discovered documents that suggest our accepted line of succession is a lie. The old king intended the throne for Lady Miriam's line, not the current ruling line." Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. The king's face hardened. "How dare you?" I withdrew the parchments, holding them high. "These bear the old king's seal and name. They detail Lady Miriam's rightful claim, suppressed and hidden for decades. Lord Edmund knew this truth and died for it. I have almost lost my own life more than once, simply for uncovering these facts." A council historian approached, taking the documents with trembling hands. He examined the seals, the handwriting, the old dates. His face went pale. "These appeared genuine," he stammered. The hall erupted in chaos. Nobles shouted accusations and denials. Some called for calm and examination, others for my immediate punishment. King Roland's eyes blazed with fury. "This is treason." At that, Celeste surged forward, sword drawn. But before she could reach me, I raised the whistle and blew. The shrill sound sliced through the uproar. Rosamond's allies stepped in, blocking Celeste's path. Steel clashed as a brief skirmish broke out. The council recoiled, horrified by the guards' aggression. This violence only confirmed my words. If I were lying, why would they try to silence me so brazenly? Rosamond stepped forward, voice ringing with authority. "We must examine the truth. Do we kill a man merely for presenting documents to our council? If we stand for justice, we must verify these claims openly." Some lords, shocked by Celeste's attempt, agreed. Others demanded calm. The king shouted for order, but the hall had fractured. Celeste, disarmed and held by Rosamond's allies, glared at me, her face etched with conflicting emotions. I saw fear there, and uncertainty. Perhaps now she realized that her oath had led her into dishonor. The historian and other scholars huddled over the documents. They confirmed the seals and compared the handwriting to known samples. Tension mounted. Word would spread beyond these walls soon enough. Guards shifted uneasily. The council was forced to acknowledge that their peaceful monarchy was built on buried truths. As the shouting died down, I lowered the whistle. My arm throbbed under its bandage and my legs trembled. But I stood tall. I had done it. Brought the truth to the highest stage in the kingdom. Now it was in their hands. The king's fury subsided into grim silence. Without a word, he rose from the throne and left the hall, trailed by a few loyal advisors. His abrupt departure only fueled whispers. Some counselors followed, others remained, stunned by the revelation. The meeting ended in disarray, but the truth had been freed from the shadows. Outside in the courtyard, chaos reigned. Servants rushed about, unsure whom to obey. Rumors flew like sparrows. Some said the king would abdicate, others that he would marshal forces to quash dissent. A few mentioned searching for Lady Miriam's living heirs, if any existed. The kingdom's future was uncertain. In that uncertainty, I found relief. The truth was out. No matter what followed, the people would not remain ignorant. Perhaps they would question their loyalties, demand reforms, or rally behind a rightful heir. Maybe violence would erupt, but truth at least gave them the freedom to choose their path instead of living under a silent fraud. As I stood by a fountain, Rosamond approached, her eyes weary but determined. "You were brave," she said. "Now the kingdom must reckon with this knowledge. It won't be easy, but no great change ever is." I nodded, tears welling. I never wanted to be at the center of this. I was just a clerk. She squeezed my shoulder gently. "History often chooses its messengers from humble stock. You did what many great lords would not dare." That afternoon, as the kingdom trembled on the edge of a new era, I realized that the hardest battles were yet to come. Would the people accept the truth and find a just path forward, or would blood spill in the streets? I had lit the torch of truth, but where its light led remained unknown. By nightfall, the castle had become a hive of anxious activity. Nobles huddled in private chambers, whispering about lineages and oaths. Some servants prayed in quiet corners. Guards no longer knew whom to trust. The revelation had shaken every pillar of order. I wandered the outer courtyard, accompanied by two of Rosamond's allies who insisted on protecting me. The moon hung low, and torches guttered in the chill wind. Through an open gate, I glimpsed distant village lights. Soon, the people beyond these walls would hear the truth. Some might rejoice at the chance for a fairer ruler. Others might resist change or fear chaos. The kingdom stood at a crossroads, and no one could say which path it would take. By dawn, a provisional council of nobles, scholars, and advisors convened in a more sober atmosphere. The king remained secluded, and rumors swirled that he was ill or preparing a desperate gambit. The documents I revealed were laid out on a table, examined once more in calmer light. After hours of debate, the conclusion was inescapable. The old king's will had indeed been altered, and Lady Miriam's claim was true. "We must decide how to proceed," said an elderly scholar named Elisine. "If we find Miriam's descendants, they may restore a rightful line. If not, we must choose a leader who can guide us through this transition with honesty." A nobleman shook his head. "The people will be confused and frightened. They've grown accustomed to the current ruler. We must explain what happened and ensure that no one exploits this crisis." Another lord added, "Without truth, we have nothing. We must inform the people at once, involve them in the resolution. Better to endure a painful reckoning now than a worse one later." I stood silently by the doors, relieved that the council no longer saw me as an intruder, but as a catalyst for their awakening. Rosamond caught my eye and smiled faintly. Thomas hovered near the edge of the room, relieved but uncertain, clutching his cap in his hands. The old order was gone, replaced by a hesitant willingness to face reality. Suddenly, Celeste was brought in by two guards loyal to the council. She looked battered and exhausted. Gone was her harsh certainty. Her eyes met mine, and I saw shame flicker there. When questioned, she bowed her head. I obeyed orders to preserve what I thought was peace. I see now that I was defending a lie. I was wrong. Her voice was strained, as though admitting this cost her dearly. A hush fell. Seeing the fierce guard brought low by conscience added weight to the moment. Perhaps not everyone would cling to falsehood. Some, like Celeste, might find a path to redemption. The council decided to spare her life, sentencing her instead to serve in a less violent capacity. She bowed, grateful, and as she passed me, she whispered, "I am sorry." I nodded, heart heavy, but forgiving. She was a product of a broken system, now forced to confront her own deeds. Outside, the first rumors spread beyond the castle. Some common folk, when told that the line of succession was contested, reacted with anger or confusion. Others were intrigued, hopeful that the future might bring more just governance. Shops opened late and villagers gathered in squares, debating what this meant for their lives. The revelation sparked not just fear, but also a sense of possibility. Perhaps a fairer, more transparent monarchy could emerge. Over the following days, patrols ensured calm. Rosamond and a cadre of sympathetic nobles prepared statements to share with the kingdom's citizens. They vowed not to repeat the mistakes of secrecy and murder. While uncertainty reigned, there was also a cautious optimism that, with honesty as a foundation, a more stable order could be built. For me, the ordeal had ended, yet my life had changed forever. I decided to remain in the archives, helping to record these events accurately. No more hidden compartments or false histories. If I could ensure that future generations knew the truth, then my brush with danger would not be in vain. One afternoon, as I walked the castle's corridors, now buzzing with purposeful activity rather than sinister silence, Thomas approached. They say scholars may travel the kingdom to search for Miriam's heirs. They may also ask the people's voice in choosing a leader if none are found, he said, eyes bright. We're making history. I smiled, remembering how I used to be invisible. Now people recognized me. Some bowed in respect, others thanked me quietly. I was no hero, but I had refused to be silent in the face of a great lie. That was enough. Before I left the main halls, I found myself back in front of that strange painting. The nobleman's eyes still followed me, but this time I felt no fear, only understanding. Secrets had lurked behind this canvas, but I had drawn them into the open. I imagined the old king's spirit, perhaps relieved that his true wishes were known. The painting was just paint and canvas, yet it had set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the kingdom. In the courtyard, Lady Rosamond approached with a warm smile. What will you do now, Arthur? I will stay and ensure our histories are told honestly, I said. We owe future generations the truth. She nodded. The kingdom has been shaken, but it will find its footing again. With honesty, we can build something better. I looked toward the gates, envisioning a kingdom where truth and fairness mattered more than old myths. Perhaps Lady Miriam's heirs would appear. Perhaps the people would choose a new ruler. Either way, the throne would no longer rest on a lie. Turning to the camera, as if addressing my audience directly, I considered how my quiet life had transformed into a grand drama. Now I ask you, if this story hooked you, subscribe to the channel for more real mysteries. Would you have the courage to face the truth like I did? Leave a comment. I stepped forward, away from the shadows and into the uncertain, hopeful light of a kingdom, learning to stand on truth.